Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Kornelia Stephanie Show. We have a really, really awesome show lined up for you today because we're going to be talking about, are you nervous to ask financial questions to your advisors or those close to you? What's holding you back from asking the questions? We're going to talk about standing up for yourself and asking these questions. Because when we look back, we can actually see how many times have we been uncomfortable in asking financial questions. Today's show is with our awesome lady boss entrepreneur, Joan Sharp. Joan Sharp of Family Advisors is not just an advisor, she's a thought leader in the area of changing your money mindset. Joan encourages us to change the difficult conversations that we have that are all about money to a pleasant conversation about a shared vision, and you will better support your values, life experiences, legacy, and wealth. Welcome to the show, Joan.
Hey, Kornelia. It's great to be here. We are pre-recording just before Christmas, but this will be running on Christmas Day, and some people will see it after. So I want to say for those who celebrate Christmas, Merry Christmas, and hope you are having a pleasant one.
Yeah, absolutely.
And hopefully this conversation, as you hear it, may ring a bell of some conversations you're going to be having after Christmas about asking questions about money. Kornelia, have you ever had a situation where you've been with an advisor or someone, maybe even on a nonprofit board of some sort, and something just didn't look right, but you felt like you were supposed to know that, so you didn't ask the question?
So personally, for me, when I look back, because of my own journey that I'm on as an empowerment coach and as an entrepreneur, I personally have not experienced that, but I have coached entrepreneurs who have, and I've had people actually on the show who have been in those situations where and I think even Joan, we had one of your coaches, one of your mentors on, I think it was in October, you brought her on as a guest, and she also, what was her name? Moira, what was her last name?
Summers, Dr. Moira Summers. Yeah.
And I think she was talking about how a lot of people feel uncomfortable talking to their financial advisors and are not asking the questions they should be asking.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've even had a situation, and I'm trained, right, as a certified financial planner, my master's in financial services. And I will say, and so this is not, so there was a certain, I'm going to say strategy we were using that I was very familiar with, but the wording that the brokers were using didn't match my training and what I knew and the way they were sending me information. And I want to share this because I find so many people are afraid to ask a question because they feel like they'll be taken as stupid, not understanding, or, and we're not about talking bad about ourselves, okay? And no question, as I feel, is a bad question. So I know, though, it took me a lot of courage because I understood the strategy. I knew what we were doing. Just some language they were using just didn't match. And I had to sit there and say, okay, even as a certified financial planner, you're going to ask this question because this is what you do. And I knew as I said, I knew what our vision was, because there was a vision. This was a major strategy that we were using. I'm very comfortable with it. It was just some wording within it. And I asked the question, and he was very happy to explain it. And he knew, and I prefaced because of my ego and supposed to know and say, this language just isn't matching what I know. And it's not that I'm second guessing. I just don't feel like I can give you a full answer because I'm not understanding this part of it. And it was fine. And I just really sat there and said, this is how clients feel. Because there are people who have no training and feel they know intuitively something's not right or they're not understanding something and they don't ask. Go ahead, Kornelia.
Well, I was going to say, wow, it's really actually kind of cool that you were in that experience, because then because you said, this is how clients feel. This is how they feel. And then we can really, when we know how someone else might feel, we can relate, and we can, maybe find it another common way on how to talk to our clients in a better way. Like, even saying, hey, if I, even as a coach or as an advisor, as a client, that you can even say to your clients, hey, I may be saying something here that you may not understand. Please feel free to ask anything.
Mhm. Yeah, well, and it's not so, but the thing is, I'm going to say this needs to come from the client because sometimes advisors think okay?
Right.
And so they don't know what you don't get that they're saying unless you ask. Now, if you've had a situation, and this has not only happened with advisors, this happens with family, spouses, buying a car, you ask a question and then someone makes you feel dumb about it or gets mad at you about it, it's usually because they don't understand it and can't explain it or feel out of control. And you need to not go in your cave because of that, but you need to sit with them and say, really, I'm sorry you feel this way. Would you like to get back to me with an answer? Mm-hmm. Give space so they don't have to say, I don't know it. They can be like, and that way you gave them space. But that usually when someone gets angry or short with you, and think about yourself, Kornelia, you're really calm. But I know with myself, sometimes with siblings or friends or those I'm close to, if I'm short, it's because I don't know something that I feel like I should know better. Yeah. And so but we have to understand that. So think about when someone's married or a partner and you are discussing finances and you ask something about a budget. I have an ex-husband that would walk out of the room if I asked a question because he didn't want to answer the question. And because I was dialing in on something he did not want me to dial in on. And so really this, and yes, this can be stressful, but unless you work through it, you don't know what's going on. And understanding is the key to you feeling empowerment with your vision too.
Yeah. And the thing about it is when we're talking about financial discussions, even in relationship, like with partners, each person's old conditioning also, like how we were raised and all of that, these things come up, and everybody's got their own triggers and around it. And so, like, even sitting down and having the conversation, that's why you help us so much with talking about what the vision is and reminding us, what is the vision? What is the vision for our finances? What is the vision for this conversation? And knowing that and understanding that, hey, we may not agree right now, or we may not, but let's see if we can find common ground and then bring us back to the vision.
Right. And that's true, especially if you're with a spouse or an advisor and they get upset. You can part of, like, if you want to get back to me or say, remember, this is what I'm looking at. I'm trying to figure out how it pulls together. I was talking with a client this week who has a child that is very frustrated on knowing something. And the client was like, hey, why don't you talk to the person? And they were a little resistant. And I looked at the client and said, is there a little ego with the thought that they are supposed to know this? Because it's a very intelligent person. And the client said, yes. And I talked about that with the child. and said, you're not supposed to know this, as they're not supposed to know what you do. And it's go in as learning and ask questions. It's okay. Because until you ask, you're not going to know. And would you expect that person to walk into your office and know what you're doing? And so it's interesting how, though we don't realize, sometimes it's our ego in the way, right? It's a fear. It's just a fear of just a fear, right? But it's really us feeling how many times. And I have to say, what's beautiful I feel about the world and that we're in is people now encourage questions and actually don't expect you to know everything. Where I'm going to say, when I was younger, we had to know everything and you couldn't ask questions. Remember, I was raised as a child of, you are to be seen, not heard. And that kind of went into school a little bit, but that has changed, I think, a lot more. That it is, you can ask questions.
Yeah, and you should ask questions because it's your experience. It's you're part of the that you're part of the creation of the experience and being part of it. You know, having a relationship with this person, relating to this person. So asking the question. But I was raised that same way too. You're to be seen and not heard, and so I know what you're talking about there. But I remember, even a time when I was, still out in the corporate world, and I was, in management positions. And I remember when I would have to deal with clients or different people, and they would come in and they would ask me certain questions. And if I didn't know the answer, then it was absolutely okay for me to say, I don't know the answer to this, but I'm going to go find out. And if we say something like that, that's really true and honest, because we don't have to know everything. That even if we don't know something, it's like you said it earlier, you brought up the ego. The ego is afraid of um, what is the fear of letting someone down, of not knowing how you're going to be viewed or whatever the thing is. But if you say, my gosh, I don't know. That's a
Yeah.
really good question. I
Yeah.
don't know. Oh my gosh. But you know what? I'm going to go find out for you. And that way we both know. And
Right.
then you go find out and then make sure you come back and let your person know what you found
Yeah.
out.
And it is, and having these conversations with advisors and or spouses is so important. Once again, I was talking to someone this week who had a friend who said, oh, that is my husband's area. I don't know. And once again, this is a very intelligent person. And they should know. Sometimes we don't ask or don't want to know because we're afraid we'll look stupid, or we just don't want to deal with it or the conflict. But I have someone else who didn't ask questions on how things are tied together and now has caused a big problem. And not in the marriage, but it has caused a big problem in some financial areas of covering some stuff. So it, and then in cases like this, when the spouse also says, especially if it's a female, but this can happen if it's a male, that's their area. I don't deal with that. If there is a sudden death or a sudden impairment, all of a sudden you have to take it on. And now you're taking on the trauma of the change and then the trauma of whatever it was that kept you back from asking those questions on what does that work and how does it work. This takes, once again, my big thing of patience and no judging. Just go with inquiry and appreciation for whatever they're doing. And remember what the vision is. The vision is for you to be educated and to understand how it fits into your bigger vision of where you want to go and what you want to do and how you want to be and how you want to show up with this. And this is why I have the Siri model, which the C is communication is the key, the basis. And then envisioning, having in mind what it is and communicating that vision and what are the resources around it, how are they going to work and how do they support that? And then implementation and working with that. And it's so important to do this. And I don't know, Kornelia, if you want to jump in here, if you had something you wanted to say about seeing this, a story where people asking to clarify, making a difference in the communication.
I think it's so important, like the whole thing with always with, clarifying and asking when we're communicating. I think it's so important, that we say, what I heard you say is this. That is, am I getting this? Did I hear you correctly by saying you said this, and did I hear you say that? And to be clear in the communication, especially when it comes to financial uh, visions and communications, and to always ask, did I hear you say this? Am I perceiving this correctly? Am I understanding this correctly? Did I hear you say you meant this? Because a lot of times I find that when we're communicating, depending on where the person is in their life, what they've got going on, where their perception is, I feel like, there's always possibility of miscommunication, of you know
Yeah.
they people misunderstand each other. I have it all the time, and especially right now, as things are moving faster, and we're so overwhelmed. So many people are so overwhelmed with information, and sorting things out. It's really important that we get our communications clear, and that's why asking qualifying questions is really important.
And everyone does it differently. I've been on many different, quite a few nonprofits and end up on the finance committee, which I'm going to say a lot of people don't want to be on the finance committee because they're afraid they don't understand. But everyone does a budget of some sort and looks at numbers. And I know almost every nonprofit I've been on does it differently. Their financial sheets and spreadsheets are different. And of course, if it's 4 pages, 1 page, 2 page, depends on the size of the budget. But what's most important is understanding where the inflows and the outflows are. And in a case where it's really complicated, I actually go sit with this if there's a CFO and have them or a bookkeeper explain their sheets to me when I go on the committee. And you're probably like, wait a minute, but you're a certified financial planner here, right? I have the training, I deal with this. But because so many people do things differently and look at the numbers differently and how you need to look at them, I ask so that I can sit in that committee and understand what I'm looking at, what's negative, what's positive, and what does this mean? Because you have grants, especially in nonprofits, or pledge money that will show up that'll look like your numbers are better than they are. And you've got to understand, is that real money that's already arrived or not? And it's the same as when you do a budget. Is that the paycheck that has arrived or is going to arrive in 2 weeks? And how does that make the rest of the numbers work for when they're on because usually the outflows are already outflows. And so it's looking at that and asking those questions. And once again, are the outflows matching the vision and the mission of the organization? Are your outflows? Is the strategy of how you have money? Matter of fact, I was on a committee. We were just having a conversation about the rainy day fund and how much should we have, especially when you have a year like this, when dues and fees coming in are going to have changed, and our expenses have changed. And we've always had a rainy day fund. It's smaller. We now have a surplus. How much stays in the money market directly accessible, and how much is in a bond fund or laddered CDs that you can still get to very easily without penalty? And how much do we keep on hand? And then if we exceed that number, do we invest it? And what I loved about that conversation is someone said, we are a nonprofit. We are an organization that shouldn't have more than our rainy day fund, that we need to plow it back into the community. And this is just because of the way this particular organization works. We don't, for the operation, there is not an endowment. For some scholarships, there's an endowment. But it was a very healthy conversation.
And that's because you were asking those questions.
Right. About, okay, why is that much money sitting there? What does this mean? What is it? And someone had asked, even before I asked that, like, what is our annual operate expenses? What do we need? And then it's like, the number was said, I'm like, well, we have more in cash here because of the rainy day. And so now we're going to put a process in place. How much needs to be in the bank and a money market making zero? And then how much could be in a bond fund or laddered CDs making 0 plus 0.01? It's not that it's not about, but it's doing a little bit and has the opportunity to grow. And so so these are asking questions, and you should never be embarrassed. So maybe it's easier to start if you're getting on a finance committee for a nonprofit, to start feeling comfortable. But really, you should feel comfortable asking your advisor if they are talking to you about something. And we advisors are well known for talking in acronyms. Okay. And guess what? Every brokerage house has its own acronyms. Every independent advisory group has their own. So don't expect to know or understand all of them. Please ask for clarification so that you are feeling part of the conversation of that's leading for your vision and your resources supporting your vision with that.
Yes. And so you developed the Siri method. And so how does that work how does that method work for people to ask advisors?
Well, if you hopefully have had a conversation with your advisor on how you like to receive information. And if you're not getting it that way, you may need to let your advisor know how you need to be communicated to receive information. If they still don't do it, really ask questions that lead towards them providing you answers and options in the way you need to receive information. And you will also learn how they like to do it and see how it works. So the communication is how we communicate, and understanding that so we can communicate to receive information. And then the vision, envisioning where and why you're doing this. And I don't mean a goal. I don't mean retirement, the word retirement. I mean, what is the next stage? What are you saving this for? What is your daily legacy? What is your vision? And then your resources, being able to understand where all your resources are, not just bank or investment or retirement, insurance, what's your estate planning documents, all of it. Understand all of it. Homeowners insurance, car insurance, understand it and how it works. And then implement if it isn't aligned anymore, because life changes, our vision change, things happen. And you need to implement and re-implement. Changing estate documents is so easy to do. And so many people get divorced and they leave the person who they were married to as their financial power of attorney or their health power of attorney or the trustee of their will, just because they didn't feel like they wanted to deal with that because the benefit was still their mutual children. But you probably, if you're not feeling well, not all cases, but in quite a few, probably don't want the person you just left and had tension with in charge of all that. So that is part of implementing.
So, Joan, let's direct the audience. We've got about a minute left to how to contact you.
Yeah. So you can go to my website, www.river, R-I-V-E-R, family advisors, ADVISORS.com. And if there's a tab, change your conversation, click on that, and there's a way to contact for personal advising and how I work with individuals and families with personal advising. And I'm also starting a coaching group and a one-on-one coaching where I can help coach you through these conversations with your advisors and your vision and come back. And where are you getting a block in stumbling into money as the excuse or the reason, and talk about and coach around the vision and how it looks in every part of your life. And that is an every other month engagement for a year.
Excellent. I love that. I love that. Thank you, everybody, for listening and for tuning in. Thank you always, Joan Sharp, for helping us change the conversation from money to vision. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you in 2021. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays. Happy New Year.